Trayston Shepard, who we've talked about before, purportedly Nolan's friend, spoke on the Officer Tatum YouTube show, and he was previously been interviewed by other outlets. He denied having anything to do with Nolan's death. On the Officer Tatum show, he said that Nolan's mom got on TV, claimed she didn't know him, and he said that couldn't be further from the truth, that he and Nolan met in the 9th grade, that Nolan was his best friend, that their friend group is mixed race, so that kind of is going against the narrative that race had something to do with what happened to Nolan. On Cuomo last night, Chris asked Elmore if he knows Trayston. Elmore said, "No, I don't. Just because you park your vehicle in someone's yard doesn't mean..."
Just because you park your vehicle in someone's yard doesn't mean that they have to know you. That was the answer Nolan Wells' father gave when asked about Trayston Shepard, a young man who claims he was Nolan's best friend, who met him in 9th grade, who cried on camera talking about the day he disappeared. And the family's response is that they don't know him.
Well, it's true that parents may not know their children's friends. There's been a dispute here amongst the family and the friends. You remember there were reports that the family tried to get Nolan's belongings, keys from the friends, and then according to reports, the family, the parents, I think it was the father or the mother, I believe it was the father, complained that one of the friends was indifferent to giving him Nolan's keys that were left behind. And then there's the issue of why did the friends have Nolan's phone? Well, that to me is easily answerable because you don't take your phone into the water with you. So from the beginning, there has
that dissonance, that void between a tearful friend and a grieving father's denial, is the heartbeat of this case. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Beyond the Gavel File. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Now, let's talk about what the family is actually doing. Christine Wonsley, Nolan's mother, has filed subpoenas. Not for law enforcement, but in a civil case tied to her son's estate. She's demanding records from TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Meta, and Life 360.
that for sure.
So we talked about this yesterday. I'm going to bring it up again. Nolan's mother, Christine, has appeared to file these subpoenas for all these records from TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Meta, Life 360. And they're part of this legal case regarding the estate of Nolan Wells. She appears to be the administrator. And these subpoenas are seeking account information, subscriber information, usernames, phone numbers, IP addresses, communications, photos. How important is all of that? What answers could they get from subpoenaing these records? And by the way, is there any legal argument? Is there any legal mechanism by which these companies would refuse to hand over this information?
Some of those companies will say you have to give us a subpoena from a law enforcement agency to get it. But other companies may say, well, if it's any request for documents or request for videos from a lawyer in a civil lawsuit, including a subpoena, that could suffice.
Do you have to file a lawsuit first?
If you want to submit a subpoena, yeah, you're going to have to.
Or in anticipation of litigation?
You can do a letter, what's called a preservation letter.
Right.
And then it's up to the companies to preserve it. And if they don't, they could be in trouble if there's a later lawsuit. They've been warned, and now they're destroying potential evidence.
Usernames, IP addresses, communications, photos, every digital breadcrumb that could have been left behind on Horn Island, Mississippi, on the 4th of July weekend.
I think we just got some major signs that Nolan Wells' family is about to take legal action, a lawsuit. And also they did an interview with my colleague Chris Cuomo last night, which puts a lot of this into perspective. We got to talk about it too. And plus, there is reporting that a friend of Nolan's is taking legal action against what he claims is false information about him. So remember what we're talking about here. 18-year-old Nolan Wells, right? From Ocean Springs, Mississippi, was a college student, football player. July 4th weekend, he went with a group of friends to Horn Island, this barrier island off the Mississippi coast. It's remote, right? It's no commercial development there. You can only access it through a boat. And at some point, he disappeared. He was reported missing that night. A massive search was launched. And 2 days later, on July 6th, his body was found in the island. But what happened to him remains a question that no one seems to be able to answer, at least publicly right now. The results of the family's independent autopsy listed Nolan's cause and manner of death as undetermined. We'll talk about it a little bit more. We're awaiting the results from the official state medical examiner as well, including toxicology reports. The family is conducting their own investigation.
And the reason they're doing this is simple: the official investigation isn't moving fast enough. The sheriff said there was no foul play within days. the state medical examiner is holding everything until a grand jury.
I think they're going to get the answers from the criminal investigation, because the criminal investigation is just not being super transparent. That's kind of normal, though, with criminal investigations. And the DA said they're going to produce things once they vet it through a grand jury. They're going to take the information to a grand jury, and then they'll release the autopsy, the toxicology report. All these things are relevant. So once the investigation is closed, then everyone will see it. If there is a case, then everyone will see it too. So I think that they're just making sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But in the end, I don't think they're going to get any additional information that they will not already get from the.
And the family is left holding an independent autopsy that officially lists the cause and manner of death as undetermined. But here's where this gets interesting. There's a second legal front. Bart Edmondson Jr. was also on Horn Island that day.
One of the other legal developments is you have this apparent friend of Nolan Wells, Bart Edmondson Jr. And apparently he has gotten caught in the crossfire by some online sleuths. Some have speculated that he had a connection with this young woman that Dave and I were talking about before, the one that Nolan was purportedly talking to, maybe stayed on the island with, that they were romantically linked. His attorney, yes, he has an attorney, says that is not true. That is not the young lady. And that is the point. Edmondson is legally fighting those he claims are spreading misinformation about him. In fact, in a statement to Law and Crime, I'm going to read this to you. It says, quote, "After a week of egregiously false and defamatory accusations against Bart Edmondson Jr., accusations which resulted in credible death threats now being investigated by the FBI, the Edmondson family has released a statement addressing their son's knowledge of and cooperation in the Nolan Wells investigation. Please see the attached statement as well as a cease and desist evidence preservation notice sent today to an online influencer in anticipation of defamation litigation against her. My law office is representing the..."
He piloted his own boat. He gave aid to a distressed vessel, the same one Nolan had ridden to the island. He removed its transom plug, touted a short distance, and cooperated fully with law enforcement.
And threats, it says, quote, "The Edmondson family expresses its sincere condolences to the family of Nolan Wells for their tragic loss. Recent targeted attacks on our son, Bart Jr., now make our silence impossible. Hundreds of Mississippi Gulf Coast residents journeyed out to Horn Island to celebrate the holiday on the 4th of July. Home from college, Bart Jr. was among them. He piloted his own boat to Horn Island and piloted his own boat home. When a nearby boat suffered a mechanical malfunction on the afternoon of the 4th, which is what we were just talking about before, Bart Jr. gave advice and direct aid to the distressed vessel. As part of this, he boarded the distressed vessel, removed its transom plug, got back onto his boat, and towed the distressed vessel for a short distance. These actions allowed water that had accumulated on the distressed vessel to drain. Bart Jr. believes that more than 20 passengers were spread across the two boats to witness these events." Goes on to say, when Nolan's disappearance and death came to light, Bart Jr. freely and fully cooperated with law enforcement investigating the tragedy. He sat for interviews, answered all of the questions he was asked, and shared all of his recollection from July 4th, 2026. Bart Jr. also compiled a list of potential witnesses. Goes on to say he allowed his phone to be viewed and shared, requested photographs and videos from that day with law enforcement. He also permitted the inspection of his boat and GPS device. At no point in this process.
He sat for interviews, let them inspect his phone, his boat, his GPS. At no point was he identified as a suspect, and yet online strangers decided he was. They posted his home address.
People have a lot of passion about this, understandably so, but people allegedly making threats. Aside from the one who I just mentioned, it was reported that another friend got threats, that the mom of one of the young men out there, I'm talking about Ashley Cole, has been receiving threats. Christine, again, Nolan's mom, has reportedly been harassed. Bad reviews being posted at her workplace, threatening messages, harassing mail. First of all, are you surprised to see this in today's day and age, our true crime space? And number two, what is the line? What is the First Amendment free speech line versus, you're crossing into legal liability?
Well, death threats are illegal.
Yep.
Threats of violence, illegal. Extortion is illegal. And we see this now so often. This is part of our culture, sadly. And we saw this in the Karen Reed case, where you have the family of the victim, you have people in the house, innocent people, who to this day are badmouthed and harassed and threatened. And
his family's workplace. They called him a killer. And now, The Edmondson family has retained counsel and is preparing defamation lawsuits against the social media influencers who spread those accusations.
We have retained legal counsel for the purpose of pursuing recourse against those individuals fabricating lies about him or our family. The first cease and desist and spoliation letter is being issued today to an online user who originated many of the falsehoods against Bart Jr. This user shared pictures of our home, our residential address, land plats, and information about our work while simultaneously falsely asserting through various videos and posts that Bart Jr. is a suspect, that he caused or contributed to Nolan's death, or that he is involved in a cover-up of Nolan's death. It is a toxic combination in an emotionally charged environment. None of these things are true. And just to give you an idea here, we have a copy of that cease and desist letter, and it says in part, quote, "Dear Miss Lee, I have been retained to represent Bart Edmondson Jr., a Mississippi resident, in response to numerous false and defamatory statements you have published on social media channels under your control, including but not limited to Facebook and Instagram channels operating under the name of..."
A cease and desist was sent to an online user who originated many of the falsehoods, and the family says the death threats that followed are now being investigated by the FBI. Now, the prosecution has a problem. If civil lawsuits move first, criminal prosecutors get nervous.
Yes, actually, it's a good point, because when you start doing interviews and it can conflict with the interviews of the state. The state's doing their own interviews. So now if you have witnesses that you're depending on are now saying something different in the civil deposition, oh my gosh, right? Also, when you're talking about a criminal investigation, that generally would come first, because if the civil investigation goes first, if the civil lawsuit goes first, the prosecutors are less likely to charge a case. Why? Because law enforcement and prosecutors don't want to be used as leverage in a civil case. So if there's
Can you explain that? What do you mean?
Well, for example, if there is an ongoing criminal investigation right now, and all of a sudden you see civil lawsuits filed, the law enforcement and prosecutors may look at that and say, okay, are we being used as leverage, that they're filing civil lawsuits and they're telling us what we want to hear so that we will put pressure on the defendants to settle.
Interesting.
And so, for example, I'm a private lawyer now,
yeah.
and we have clients who come to us and say, we have a beef with this other company, take it to law enforcement, and we also want to sue. I said, well, if we sue first, when we take it to law enforcement, they're going to say, oh, you want us to join in here so that you have leverage in your civil lawsuit. No.
Why? Because they don't want to be used as leverage in a civil case if witnesses give sworn depositions in a wrongful death suit.
Criminal investigation.
Just want to focus us on a second what a lawsuit would look like. What would be the claim? Either wrongful death, X, Y, and Z, you caused Nolan's death, or you left him by himself and he died. Is that a legal cause of action? And also, do they have any claim against law enforcement?
Much tougher to sue law enforcement. They've got sovereign immunity.
Yeah.
You can sue friends, though. Private citizens don't have any such immunity. You could go after them for culpable negligence or just plain negligence. You violated your duty of care if you can establish a duty of care. But in the end, it's not so easy, because if you don't have real evidence, if you're just going on a fishing expedition, then the subpoenas, the deposition notices could get quashed by the court. They could say, no, you just can't, without evidence, start suing people.
Because if you file a lawsuit, the first thing defendant will file a motion to dismiss it, saying, even if you say everything is true, it doesn't support the claims, your causes of action.
Is there a cause of action, right? What's the cause of action? And because what you say in the lawsuit has to be, you have to base it on something.
Right.
So what they'll do is they'll make allegations, and then the judge could throw it out if there's no there.
And then later testify before a grand jury. They can be impeached on any inconsistencies. And if a jury hears a witness is suing for money, it goes to credibility. That's why prosecutors are signaling to the family and to the friends to slow down. Let us do our work first. But the problem is that law enforcement isn't being transparent. The DA has said everything will stay sealed until the grand jury. And in a case with this many conflicting accounts, secrecy only fuels speculation. And then there are the friends. One of them, Warren Hudson, said no one touched Nolan's phone. But Ben Crump told Cuomo that Nolan's mother called his phone repeatedly with no answer.
Ben Crump, again, he was on with Cuomo, talked about the phone. So there's a whole lot of talk out there about whether Nolan reportedly left his phone behind why did he do it, whether any data was deleted from it. Now, Nolan's purported friend Warren Hudson told Brandon Tatum on this YouTube show there was no reason for us to get on Nolan's phone. No one touched Nolan's phone. If none of us had touched Nolan's phone, then, there's no reason for anything to be deleted. Ben Crump said to Cuomo last night, quote, his mother called his phone repeatedly with no answer. That raises questions. That's all we want to get to is answers. If that's true, that's interesting, right? Because wouldn't the friends pick up the phone?
Possibly. And I know Ben Crump is an honorable person, and I understand why the family and Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton are concerned about the lack of transparency. But the fact that no one picked up the phone is not in itself evidence of foul play. That phone was apparently on the boat without Nolan, and it could have rang, it could have been on silent mode, and people may have not have known that the phone was ringing. And also, we don't know the facts. Like the family.
If the phone was on the boat, and the friends were on the boat, wouldn't someone have picked up? Unless they didn't hear it. Unless it was on silent. Unless they didn't want to answer. No one saw anything. That's what they keep saying.
Stuck on.
Isn't it just as crazy to have all those people there and not one person sees an attack, an act of physical violence against someone who apparently was popular amongst the whole group? Not one video. No one has alleged a thing.
Unless law enforcement has all that information, then they're just not releasing it yet. Unless they're like, we have multiple statements about an attack. We have multiple people who saw Nolan drowning. But would they release it now to try to quiet the hysteria? Or they say, look, we can't yet because the investigation's going on.
That's where I say, in a case like this, when there's so many conspiracy theories, that they should be more transparent.
Sure.
But the fact is that people can't keep secrets, right? Mark Twain said 2 people can keep a secret if one of them is dead. Mm-hmm. If this were the case, if people had seen something, you'd think that it would have gotten out. So it looks like that he drowned in an area where people weren't looking or no one noticed it, sadly. But if there was an attack, violence, where it's multiple combatant action, yes, someone would have seen, heard something, even recorded it. That to me makes it impossible that that actually happened. That's why I think that there was an accidental drowning.
All those people, and not one person saw an attack, or a push, or even a drowning. So where do we stand? The family is preparing a wrongful death lawsuit.
What capacity, against who, and what would be the claims?
It could be a wrongful death action. Remember, when you prosecute someone for a murder or homicide, you need to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But if you are moving ahead with a lawsuit based on wrongful death or battery, you only need to prove it with a preponderance of the evidence. It's more likely than not that it occurred.
Lower standard, yeah.
A lower standard, right? O.J. Simpson was found not guilty because the standard beyond a reasonable doubt was so high, but he was found liable for the deaths of Nicole Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Lower standard. So what the family's doing here is what they've already been doing with the independent autopsy. They don't necessarily trust what the government is doing, and so they're saying, we're going to do our own investigation, the independent autopsy, which was inconclusive, and we don't trust that there'll be criminal charges filed, so we're going to do an investigation via lawsuit through private lawyers. That's where the preservation letter.
The friends are preparing defamation lawsuits. The state is preparing a grand jury. And in the middle of all of it is an 18-year-old whose body was found in the water with an independent autopsy that couldn't rule out foul play. The family is not going to stop. They've already said that. And the friends are now lawyering up and fighting back. This isn't a case that's going to quiet down. It's a case that's just getting started. And that brings us to the document you need to look at yourself. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has said they're investigating online reports of an alleged altercation on the island that day. The family's preservation notice also specifically demands evidence.
By People magazine, that a preservation notice, which you just mentioned, a notice to preserve evidence, was sent by Nolan's family to the families of Nolan's friends and different investigative bodies or agencies. And one letter that was obtained says, quote, accordingly, you have an immediate legal duty to preserve all materials of all kinds within your possession, custody, or control that may be relevant in any way to the claims or defenses. This duty includes not only you, but also your family members. And according to reporting from People and ABC News, one was even sent, for example, to Ashley Cole, who's a judge whose son was reportedly with Nolan Wells that day. It seems like they might be filing a lawsuit.
Of any altercations. On July 4, that's the key phrase. The official investigation hasn't confirmed an altercation, but the family is clearly seeking evidence of one. So here's the question we leave you with. If nothing happened that day, why is the family's legal strategy so clearly built around the idea that something did? Read the preservation notice yourself. It's public. Look at the language. Altercations, claims, or defenses. This isn't a family fishing for answers. This is a family building a legal case, and the friends are now building theirs. The question is simple: who do you believe? And what did they see? If you want to follow this investigation as it unfolds, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Beyond the Gavel File. Because we don't stop when the headlines fade. We follow the evidence until the very end.